Hi everybody and welcome to the first video of our fighting game course. Today we're gonna be creating the two players, add some control to them, and yeah, so that's basically it. Now I've showed you in the previous video how to import or how to download or get sprites for your characters, and I've already imported 3 sprites for 2 characters, and I've imported them to GameMaker Studio. So I have an idle sprite for this character called Ash. Now make sure that the origin must be in at least below the feet of the player. Alright, so make sure it's either to the bottom center or very close to its feet. So yeah, and make sure that every sprite has the same origin for every character. And yeah, also I've created a solid sprite, which is just a 16 by 16 blue square, and I've imported a field for the battle or stage, whatever. So I'll be leaving a link in the description if you want to use the same background. And also I changed the room in here, so I just set the stage as the background, and that's pretty much it. Now I've also created some scripts that are gonna be helpful for us. So I have a shortcut group here, and it has 3 scripts, and basically we have KC, and it's gonna return keyboard check. Since we're gonna be doing a lot of keyboard checking, then instead of typing like the whole thing keyboard check, we're just gonna type KC, and we're gonna do the same thing for keyboard check pressed and keyboard check released. One more thing is that we're gonna be needing some macros, and here are the macros that for now, or in this exact episode, that we're gonna be needing. So if you're using GameMaker Studio 1, then you're gonna have to create them from like here. I think there is like an option called resources, and then choose macros or whatever, and a table will pop up where you can input your macros. So let me go over the macros that we're gonna be dealing with. Well, as you can see, I have here a region for the characters. Now we're gonna be creating a new macro for each character that you have, and make sure that each macro have a different value than the other one. Okay, so each character must be unique. Now we have some game variables here. So we have like a gravity force, which is 0.5. I think it should be fine. We have jump force -10, sprint speed, and walk speed. Now these are self-explanatory, nothing too special about them. So we have controllers. Well, controllers are, we have 3 options. We have controller P1, P2, and computer or CPU. This is like for the AI that we're going to be using later, not in this video, but later in the course. So the player object that we're going to have will have a controller variable. Now if the controller variable equals to control P1, then the player number 1 will be able to move it using the WASD keys. If it's P2, then we're gonna move it using the arrow keys, and we're gonna be using different methods for the AI. Also, finally, we have states. We only have one state for now, which is state 3. In this state, the player can do whatever he wants. So let's actually start making the game itself. So we're gonna be needing a controller, right? So we're gonna create a controller. So obj, controller, and it is basically the only object that needs to be in the room. Okay, so just put it there. Actually, we're gonna also need in a solid object, of course. So this is for the ground and the collision detection. Make sure it's solid and invisible. So let's go to the room and put some solid objects in here. So just grab one and stretch it to the side. So this is gonna be like the, oops, oh my god, I can't undo that. Okay, let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, just go back, and okay, so make sure to cover the ground with it. Add one for the walls or the sides. Okay, and we don't need to cover the top, since the characters can't go like over the walls. And make sure to make them a little bit higher than the room itself. Okay, Alright, so that's pretty much it. Now we're also gonna be needing a player. So obj player, and since we're here, we're gonna be choosing a mask for now. So just pick a player and choose the idle sprite as a mask for it for now. Okay, so let's add some variables to the player. Okay, so create event. Let me minimize that. Okay, so here we're gonna create some variables for our player. Now the player is gonna need some, like, you know, usual stuff like h speed, v speed, gravity, and such things. So let's go ahead and create them. So we have horizontal speed equals 0, vertical speed, same thing. We have gravity power, which is gonna be gravity, which is a macro that we created. We have a variable called character, which is gonna be equal to one of your character macros. So I'm gonna go with KO as the default character. Also a controller, controller P1. So the player number, or this object, will be controlled using the WASD keys. And we have an opponent, so each player object has an opponent, of course, now which is gonna be no one for now. And finally we need a state, which is gonna be state free. So in this case, we're gonna be able to do whatever we want. You can move, you can punch, kick, jump, whatever. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the player's create event. Now we need to handle sprites for this object, right? So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go to the scripts, and let's add the group and call it characters. Let's add the script here, create script, and let's call it handle sprites. So in order to do that, we need to switch the character, right? So switch character, and let's say case, and you're gonna go through each character you have, all right? And you're gonna add some sprites for it. So we have an idle sprite, which is in this case is gonna be SPR KO idle, and we basically need to do this for every sprite you have for the character. So forward and backward, SPR KO backward, and of course we need to do the same thing for the second character that we have, which is Ash. So, and we just need to name these two Ash. Okay, pretty simple, right? And as for now, the player object doesn't have a sprite. So when we start the game, we want this to set the sprite index to SPR idle. Oops, idle. Okay. Now here's the thing. We go to the controller. Now we want to spawn the players in the room, right? So spawn the players, spawn. Okay. Alright. Now we're gonna be creating like two of the same object, which is player, right? And so here's what we're gonna do. So P1 equals instance create layer. Now if you're using GMS 1, then it's just instance create without the layer. And we want to spawn the players in the middle of the room. Well, the first part is gonna be, we'll have the x value of room with divided by 2 minus 100, and let's choose a y value here. It depends on your room. This is like the layer ID and the player, obj player. Okay, now let's duplicate this line and change this to P2, and the x offset to plus 100. So this is like for spawning the players, right? Well, we want the player 2 to be facing the player 1, right? So we're gonna need to invert this player 2 image x scale. We also want the player 2 to control the this second object. So we're gonna change the controller to controller P2, okay? And we wanna set the opponents for them. So we're gonna say P1.opponent equals P2, right? And the player 2 opponent equals P1, okay? Also, we need to set the sprites for them. so here's what we're gonna do, or the characters. So we're gonna say p1.character equals choose a character for the player 1 KO, and p2.character equals character Ash, or whatever your character name is. Now we need to update the sprites for them, and that's why we made that script. So we're gonna say with p1, so with p1 handle sprites character, okay, and we're gonna do the same thing with player 2, handle sprites character. Now in here you may say that we don't have like this variable with character, it doesn't exist. Well, what's wrong here? Okay, let me check. Number of argument, oh, of course, yeah, we this needs to be argument 0. Argument 0, okay. So when we use with, the code that we type here is gonna be replaced like inside the player itself, so we can access like its variables and stuff without referring to it like p1.character, okay. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the create event for the controller. Now if we run the game, we can actually see that we're gonna have like 2 instances of the OBJ player, and they're gonna be facing each other. And yeah, so I'm gonna give the game a quick run to show you guys the result. Well, remember, we already have a controller in the game, and it's gonna create 2 players, all right, with different controllers. Even though we can't like move them or anything, but at least we can see them in the room, right? So I'm just gonna wait a little bit for the game, and it should pop up any minute now. Okay, so here it is. As you can see, there is a room, here are the 2 characters, and now we want to add some control to them, right? Well, first of all, we need to handle the collision, and so we're gonna create another script called collision and movement. Now this is gonna be pretty simple. Well, we want to increase the vertical speed each time by the gravity, right? So that the player oops, what did I do? Okay, so that the player doesn't stand still in the air. So we need to increase the vertical speed by the gravity force. Now we're gonna do some horizontal collision. Now this is gonna be like a famous collision code. So we're gonna be detecting if place meeting x plus horizontal speed y obj solid. Then what do we want to do here? We want to while, well, let's duplicate this. Oh my god, okay. So while not place meeting, the same thing, and this needs to be sine, so that it works whether we're moving to the right or the left, okay. Then in this case we want to x plus equals sine horizontal speed, so that we move exactly near the wall, and we need to set the edge speed to 0, okay. And down here we're gonna say we want to increase the x value by edge speed, and we can do the same thing for the y value. Now let's duplicate this and do the same thing for the horizontal collision. So we're just gonna have to replace these by this is gonna be y plus vertical speed. This is gonna be y plus sine of vertical speed. This is gonna be y, and this is vertical speed. So that's pretty much it for the collision. This is like a pretty famous code in the game maker community, or any like 2D game engine. Yeah, now we want to add some character control, right? So we want to move, we want to like jump. For now we just what's that? I'm about, what? Really? Character control? Okay, that was weird. Anyway, so as I told you, our character will have different states, right? So we're gonna be switching our state, and we can only move if we are in the free state free. Okay, so in this case we are able like to do whatever we want. Okay, do whatever we want. Okay, so in here we want, if we press for example the horizontal key, or sorry, the W key, we're gonna jump. If we press the D key, we move to the right or the left. So yeah, so for that we're gonna be needing some variables which are gonna be well, let's go to the player object, and in this step event, let's add a step event. Gonna name this to character. Oops, I'm not typing. Character control. All right. I'm gonna add the region here. If you're using GMS1, then I don't think you can do that, but doesn't really matter, just to like a better way to organize your code. But in here I'm gonna add a variable called right. Now here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna check the controller. So if our controller equals controller P1, then in this case we want the right key to be ORD W. Okay, otherwise we're just gonna use the right key, and we're gonna do the same thing for the left key. Now if you're using, again, nope, sorry, this should be D and this should be A. Okay, it's gonna be P2, or no, sorry, P1, same thing. This is gonna be left. And so if you're using GameMaker Studio 1, then you can't actually use this binary operator statement. So you're gonna have to check if controller equals control P, then right equals or D, else right equals VK right. Okay. Yeah. So the binary operator is not supported in GameMaker Studio, so we're gonna have to do that. Okay. So now that we have the right and left key, we can go back to our character control script, and we can do something like hspeed equals. So we remember that we already have like this walk speed macro, right? And so it's just gonna be walk speed times keyboard check right minus keyboard check left. Now this is so KC is just gonna return 1 or 0 depending if we're pressing this or not. Okay, so this is like the sum of this input. So it can either be -1 if we're only pressing the left key, it can be 1 if we're pressing only the right key, and if we're not pressing anything, or if we are pressing them both at the same time, then it's gonna be return 0 and we're not gonna be able to move. So that's pretty much it for the character movement for now. Let's add another script called animation control, and in here we're just gonna like change the sprites and whatever. So switch switch state. So basically the same thing, and we only have one state for now, so it's gonna be state free. State free break. Okay, I can't type today, can I? Alright, so we're just gonna check if hspeed equals 0, then we want the sprite index to be the standing still sprite or the idle sprite, so sp idle. Else sprite index equals well, we want to check if our, so we can either be like moving backward or forward, right? And we're gonna detect that by comparing the sign of our horizontal speed with the sign of our image axis scale. So in this case we're gonna be moving SPR forward if they have the same value, otherwise we're gonna be moving backward, right? Speaking of image axis scale, oops, I forgot the question mark. Now again, the binary operator is not supported in GameMaker Studio. Sorry, this should be single equal sign in GameMaker Studio 1. So you're gonna have to do like an if else statement. Okay. And speaking of image axis scale, we actually need to do well, we're gonna do something here. So we're gonna update the image axis scale. So it's gonna be if our opponent has a greater x value than ours, then then we want the image scale to be 1, otherwise it's going to be -1, so that we're facing it or him the whole game. Okay, so again, if you're using Game Maker Studio 1, then replace this by if else statement. So if opponent.x is greater than x, then image scale equals 1, else it's going to be -1. So let's go to our player, and in this step event, so we have like this region for keys, character control. So we're gonna just call the script character control, animation control. So animation control, animation control. Finally, we have the collision, so collision and movement. All right, now let's give the game a quick run and see if everything is working fine. Okay, so I'm just gonna have to wait. Alright, so as you can see, we can move this player using the WASD keys, which only the D and A key are working. And notice how my image scales change when it changes depending on the position of our opponent. So I can also control this character using the right and left arrows. So that was it for this tutorial, guys. I'm not gonna make it too long. So in the next video, we're gonna be adding some more control, like jumping, animations, and maybe even combos and stuff. So that was all for today, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like it and subscribe if you're not already. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.